Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Beach FM like to welcome now the National Party candidate for the Otaki seat, and also, I suppose this is much more pertinent, chair of what I think we coined the last time we talked about this, Tim, the Save the Kapiti Airport Committee. Tim Costley, good morning and welcome to you.
Morning, John, and great to be talking to you.
Tim, last night you had a meeting, a public meeting. What happened in terms of the various objectives you have in saving the Kapiti Airport?
Yeah, well, it was a fantastic meeting last night, John. We were at St Paul's Church on Kapiti Road there, right opposite the old control tower, looking out at the airfield. And it was a fantastic turnout. The building was overflowing. We put in every spare seat in the complex from the hall. They were all filled up. We still had people standing at the back. In fact, the TV news crews that were going to film in the foyer didn't have enough room, so they had to go outside to do their live bits for the TV news. But a couple of people commented on the way in. They thought there was a big funeral on just from the number of cars that were parked everywhere. But I said, look, this isn't a funeral. This is a revival meeting. We haven't given up on this airport, and I believe we can do something great here.
Are you sure it's not a funeral? Are you sure that the horse hasn't already bolted?
Well, that was the concern that started this, wasn't it? That look, it's owned by a private owner, and I guess legally they can do what they want. But what we have seen last night was a very strong and united voice from the community saying we want this land always to be zoned as an airport. We want this airport to stay operational indefinitely. That was the resounding conclusion, met with huge applause, and that is the voice. So I think it's become very clear that rezoning this land is not an option for the developers or for anyone else. It will always be zoned as an airport. Therefore, the question actually becomes, well, how do we work with that moving forward? How do we preserve the airport? What can the developers or someone else do around the edges? How can we look at the future? But fundamentally, they purchased an airport. They own an airport. It's always going to be an airport. So we really want to see them come to the table now and have an open and honest conversation about what the future really holds for their land.
So the new owners were not present at the meeting last night?
No, they decided not to front up. Look, we've heard them say on TV and in written communication with me that they want to hear, and the quote is, we want to hear the concrete ideas of the community. Well, last night we heard those ideas. We heard them very clearly. I invited them. I sent emails, texts, phone calls. I did get a response that said, sort of, I hope your meeting goes okay, but when I repeated the invite many times, they didn't want to turn up, and it's really disappointing, I guess, that this was their chance. If they're genuine about wanting to hear what the community want, this was the perfect chance. It was also the chance for them to come and sell their vision, which they're really excited about. They've chosen not to do that. They appear to just want to have meetings one-on-one and try this divide and conquer approach, which I don't think works with the Kapiti community.
There are rumours there are a lot of meetings going on, and maybe obviously a lot of those discussions are not public. I'll ask the question again. Are you worried the horse has already bolted?
No, I'm not. No,
okay.
I think we can do something good here because I know them. Look, I've had real estate agents come up to me and other business people that they've gone up to and tried to sell it. Look, this could be good for you personally. No one's buying into it. No one I have heard is buying into it. And yes, they legally could stop an aeroplane from flying or landing on their runway, but they can't go out and unilaterally change the zoning of that airport. And what is really clear now is no council or mayor would ever want to go against the resounding unanimous view of the community that wants to see that airport stay operational. So it would, could they stop? They could turn it into a paperweight, but then they'd be in an even worse position. So I don't think anyone's silly enough to do that.
Was the council represented at your meeting last night?
Yeah, they were, absolutely. So Mayor Guru spoke at the meeting. There were a number of councillors there. I've been working with them the whole way through. I've been open to everyone. I wanted everyone to be a part of this and have the chance to have their say. And Mayor Guru was clear that he wants to see it stay as an airport. And at the end, when the call was put, will councillors and the mayor come out and say that, look, they'll never support a zoning change for that land. You had a councillor like Angela Buswell who was the first to get her hand up and say, yes, I will always support that being an airport, which is fantastic to see.
Did people say why they wanted the airport to continue as an airport?
Yeah, they did. And that was one of the... I took notes through the meeting and I summarised them for people at the end to make sure that this was what the community was saying, not what I was thinking. And people talked about the need for it to support our region in times of emergency. Say if there was an earthquake and the Kapiti coast became cut off and we needed supplies in and out, and we need an airport to do that, given the size of the population. People talked about the wider resilience of the Wellington region and the fact that the airport is relied on by Defence Force and other people to support either a civic or civil defence emergency in Wellington or the wider region. People talked about the day-to-day use where it supports air ambulances, and Mayor Guru referred to the medical staff from Wellington Hospital who have come out and said they need it. You heard from the Aero Club that the rescue helicopters are in there 2, 3, 4 times a week needing fuel. And of course people also talked, we had Chatham's Air Chatham's and Sounds Air. They talked about the need for supporting business travellers like Goodman's Contracting that operate out of Waikanae, that use it a huge number of flights a week, as well as holidaymakers and recreational pilots. So we heard a wide range of views and reasons, which all just built up that case to save the airport.
Now, this is interesting to have the kind of public support that you've got there, but have you got any direct idea about where to go from here? Were there any outcomes from the meeting last night?
Yeah, so there were. So there were a few outcomes that everyone agreed on. One was around that strategic importance, and I just outlined some of the reasons around that. One was around the value of the airport being more than just a landing fees. I mean, the fact that it does make a profit. There's been a story out there that it's losing money. It's making a profit. It's just not making as much as the owners would like. So that was sort of covered off, as was the agreement that we need more housing in Kapiti. We see huge, exciting growth coming to the region, but fundamentally, everyone agrees that that is the wrong land for housing. I think one that would be interesting, though, was it was talked about, well, how do we develop that land? And there was a sort of a call within the room to consider some pragmatic options, to say, well, what if we keep the operational parts of the airport? We keep the runway, we keep the movement areas, we keep that so we always have a functional airport, but there is room around the outsides that more development could take place. We've seen that with New World and Maitaten and places like Burgerfield, and maybe we could have that discussion. But the biggest call is, given that we want to all save the airport, we have to actually have the owner, the developer, turn up and front up and have an open and honest conversation. That's what we haven't been able to do at a community level, or even with, say, for them to sit down and speak with the whole Save Kapiti Airport group, which includes airlines, aero clubs, Chamber of Commerce, council. So I think the two clear outcomes. One is to have that conversation and to get the owners to come to the table, but reinforcing that point that a zone change for the airport itself will never really be an option.
Well, Tim, I introduced you as the National Party candidate, which I suspect everyone knows, and then I regretted it and saying, well, that's not quite fair because this is a local issue. But now it gets political. In around about 3 weeks, you could well be a Member of Parliament for Otaki. You could well be the member of an incoming government. What are you prepared to do if you are elected to save Kapiti Airport, and what role do you think central government has in this?
Yeah, fantastic. And look, I'm prepared to keep on fighting every step of the way. I was challenged by the Labour and Green candidates that I shouldn't be getting involved in this, that this isn't our job, that this isn't our place to be involved. I disagree. I think this is absolutely my job. Whether or not I'm getting paid, whether or not I'm the MP, I believe in this. I genuinely believe this is the right thing for the region, and so I will fight all the way, and I'm happy to take a leadership role when no one else is willing to step up. So I will keep on fighting. What does central government need to do? Well, look, I'll tell you what the developers need to do. They just need to do nothing. The point here was that it's not the ownership of the land hasn't inherently been the problem. There are some issues around that, but that will take time to unpack. We're waiting for tribunal reports. The local iwi are part of the Save Kapiti Airport group. I'm working with Puketapu Hapu very closely, and we're all agreed we just want to see the airport stay operational. What we need now isn't someone to come in and buy the land because it's not for sale. What we need is the airport to stay in use operational operationally. That's not something that takes money. That's not something that takes a law. That's something that takes the right decision from the owners. So first and foremost, it's about showing, and this is what I've been doing, showing the strong community support, showing that a property development isn't actually an auction, and it never will be. And it's about bringing them to the table. So I think this is a case where we need a bit of moral leadership just to lead through this, with or without a job title, to keep fighting for it and to get them to the table. That has to be the next step, to make sure we're going to keep this airport operational. And then we can lead the conversation about what happens around the outside. And look, there's lots of combinations and permutations that could look like, but I wouldn't want to jump the gun on those too early.
But this is private land. Don't those private owners have the right to be able to develop their land as they see fit? And frankly, you're in a slightly vulnerable position in that it was a previous national government that hopped it off in highly dubious circumstances. So don't you think the central government has to have at least a minor financial role in this? Because the hapu don't have a lot of money, the KCDC doesn't have a lot of money, they're very, very close to their lending limits, and someone somewhere has got to come up with some coin, surely.
Well, you're right. It's private property, right? So, and unless they say they're going to sell it, money's not the issue. It's not for sale. But yeah, absolutely, they have the right to control their land. They don't have the right to develop it how they want, because there's zoning rules and there's environment courts and there's all sorts of things. There's years of process to change those zoning laws. So they have the right to operate that land within the current zoning laws, but that doesn't allow for property development. And when they purchased the land, they knew it was zoned only for an airport. So there's no surprises here. This hasn't come as a revelation to them that they suddenly ended up with an airport by mistake. They bought an airport, and so I think there's an equally strong moral argument there that they should keep running the airport. Now, if they decide they don't want to do that, then that's what opens up the discussion around, well, if they're not going to use it as an airport, is there a moral argument that it needs to go back to the original owners, both the Hapu and the McLean family? Obviously, there were multiple owners originally.
Yes, that's right.
It wasn't just iwi, so it's a bit more complicated than it's been made out at the papers. But equally, the question is, well, National sold it in 1995. Do you know what? I completely agree. But I'm not going to be limited by what a government when I was at high school did. I'm going to fight for what I believe is right. And look, I was 15 at the time. I didn't understand the ins and the outs and how that all worked. But I'm 40 now, and I'm here, and I'm fighting, and I'm not going to give up.
Tim Costley, thank you very much for your company this morning.
Thanks, Joe.
106.3 Beach FM.